Bill Grave absent, and John Hines called, is grading AP math exams, very important at this time of year. And Dominic, he's promised good grades for your son if he's an AP.
No, he's not.
Okay, in which case, we'll miss John, but he is busy, and a credit to him that he's been asked to do that. So with that,
Move we approve the minutes?
thank you. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Correspondence, everybody in receipt of the revised dates of planning board meetings, I suspect for the duration of the year. Everybody's in receipt of that?
Yes.
Anybody have any issues, questions with it? No? No? All set? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I have some correspondence, one of which I'll forward over to Fran, related to the DOT having no concerns about the warehouse. Hold on, where is that? Right here? Would you hand this over to Fran for the record? Thank you, that sore shoulder is really, okay. Some minutes from the zoning board and so forth. Fran, I'll get you the rest of the stuff as necessary. Resolutions, Dominic, do we have any resolutions?
No, sir.
Okay, discussion, two little small pieces of community information. One, Amy is involved with, would you do like a 30-second summary? Amy is our representative on the new comprehensive plan committee.
Sure. So we are in the process of redoing the comprehensive plan. The last one was in 2019, I believe. And we just had our first public work session last week. Was it last week or this week? Last week, yes, because it's only Monday. And yeah, please fill out the survey. The survey is still live until I believe July 7th.
Right.
June 7th. I'm all confused, but.
June 7th.
Yeah, June 7th.
But we'll ask anybody, member of the public, since you're on air in the national studio audience, that maybe we can ask the general public to respond to that survey and contribute to the plan, which is going to be completed over the next 6 months, is it?
6 months is the goal, yes.
Okay, very good.
And we are meeting, those meetings are announced and they are public, so if anybody's interested in attending any of those meetings, you should be able to find them on the, when they are held on the town website.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thanks,
Can we
Amy.
put a link to the survey as part of like the comments and for the video, in case anybody who's watching the video wants to complete the survey, we'll get that
It's a very astute
over
crowd, do
to
that.
Oscar, and that way they could link right to it without having to go find it.
Be great.
And
Thank you.
the survey, I don't know, Amy, if you mentioned this, but the survey is open till Friday.
Yes,
Yeah.
June.
June 6th.
Sixth,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Both are on. That's okay, good, okay, thanks. And secondly, Len, would you take 2 seconds? Len, the planning board members sometimes are involved in relevant community project, and I've asked Len to take 1 minute just to explain his bridge project, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Len, would you take a minute?
Well, thanks, Neil. So my main job is as a professor at West Point, where I teach civil engineering. We do a capstone project every year with a large group of cadets to improve their training in doing, complicated logistics and design and all the things that they'll be called upon to do as officers in the Army. But as part of that, we partner with the Open Space Institute and New York State Parks to build bridges across the region. We just finished our, I believe, 10th one, 9 of those with OSI. And this new one's just off Seven Lakes Drive, just north of Seven Lakes Drive in Harriman State Park on the Appalachian Trail. Came out really well. There's been a couple news articles about it. But I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing with the cadets all these years.
Okay, and we're very proud of that too. Thank you, Len. With that, we'll move on to old business. We do have a request for a 6-month extension. Dominic, I'll turn that to you.
Yes, this is the 2-lot subdivision known as the Lands of Shaw. They are requesting a 6-month extension of their previous approval, and that would run from this meeting to the board's December 1st meeting.
Okay, very good. Does anyone have any questions on that? This is like fait accompli, correct?
Yes.
So to speak. Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Dominic, for keeping us in order on that. Okay?
No, my pleasure.
Okay, with that, we don't have a public hearing tonight, so we'll move into T-Mobile Northeast. T-Mobile here? There we are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Al Glad from the law firm of Cody and Fader on behalf of T-Mobile.
So this is a relatively straightforward co-location of 3 new T-Mobile antenna on the Tectonic building, which has 12 existing Verizon antenna. They'll be mounted on ballast sleds on 3 different sectors. And then the equipment compound is going to be located at grade next to the building in a 198 square foot fence compound, which we're proposing also to screen with 8 to 10 foot white pine.
There are no changes in the substantial changes or anything else, so we'll go to our consultants. I think Kristen will explain that. Kristen?
Yes, so as Alex said, 3 antennas and a new equipment closure at grade. This is an existing facility. I'm sure most of you were around when Verizon had a very similar application 2 years ago. Located at an existing office building located at 7 Pleasant Hill Road. That site is in the PCD zone. Cell towers are allowed by special permit. As the antennas are on the roof, and the setback enclosure is right next to the building. No setbacks are being impacted. I did have a minor question about pine trees that are being added. It just looks like you can't actually open the fence enclosure, and whoever wants to get in there probably is not gonna wanna deal, and maybe not when you plant them, but 5-10 years down the road. It looked like there might be a conflict there, but it's really just something for you to take a look at. It's not really a matter for the town to be terribly concerned about. The zoning code permits these antennas by special permit. This section requires the applicant to demonstrate that the structure, can be modified so the communications facility does not pose a threat to public health, safety, yada, 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 blowing ice, debris. The applicant did provide a structural analysis that I'm sure that Quinn can talk more about. The code allows for a visual impact assessment that this board may require. We have done that in the past. On this particular site, it was done for the initial plan, but it was not requested for the Verizon co-location. So this board has the ability to request, but did not for the last application on this roof. This site is extremely sensitive, but the antennas, for the most part, the antennas and the infrastructure is there. And this is very similar in height and how it's going to look to the Verizon antennas. This board has the ability to waive the public hearing. Again, the public hearing was waived for the Verizon application at the same location. The applicant provided an EAF, which is acceptable. Similar to, again, the Verizon application at the same site. This was a type 2 action at that point, so no additional secret action would be required. My letter is out of date, and it says that this requires an Orange County Planning Department referral, which we did last week, and the county has already responded in record time. We received a GML letter this afternoon from the county, which is amazing, but they had no inter-county issues or any binding comments.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you, Kristen. Quinn?
Yeah, so we primarily looked at the structural analysis provided. I mean, we had no real issues with that. You guys are showing that you're meeting the 20 pounds per square foot roof load for the building code requirements. Our biggest concern was just that you guys provide all of the documents in the structural opinion letter that were listed. Found a small issue in the EAF, just a discrepancy with the building height listed in there, but for the most part, we had no major comments. So.
And does that require modification?
My suggestion would be that would be a condition of the approval.
Okay.
I think there's just some cleanup items at that point, and as Kristen had mentioned, it is a type 2 action. EAF helps determine that.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, there's no further secret review that's required.
Okay. With that, I'll ask for comments from the board, Steve.
No comment.
Mary Beth?
No comments.
Amy?
No comments.
Ed?
Only what color, the antennas?
I think they're typically white.
Yeah, I think in the past, we've requested a light gray
Okay.
or a matte gray, because the white's very visible for the people that are up on the mountain looking down towards that space.
Yeah.
and for people on the throughway and stuff.
Do you have any objection to that?
I am sure that will be fine with it.
Okay. Very
There's,
good.
I mean, there's no technical need for white, I don't think.
No.
No.
Okay. I mean, you can put concealment film on it that's reflective to try to make it look like the sky, but there's a lot of different things that can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
With that, before we consider a resolution, however, we have to waive the site, the issue with the balloons or whatever, the
Visual assessment.
visual sensitivity, yes, that's what they call it. Does anyone have any problem with that? Steve? Amy? Mary Beth?
It was done for Verizon, so I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, we'll take a motion to waive that.
So move.
All in favor? Okay, also I need a motion to waive public hearing, which we've done in the past with the same type of project.
Yeah, given, Mr. Chairman, that there's no material change to the visual impact from these antennas versus the ones that are already on that installation, Kristen, I think you'll agree with that, right? I mean, it's already pretty much the same thing hanging up there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, then I move we waive the public hearing.
Very good, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. And with that, we can go to a motion for approval, Dominic?
Yes,
Conditioned on?
yes, this would be amendment to the existing site plan and special permit for this site. The board would like, we can prepare that resolution, and then the board could also authorize the chairman to sign it. It'd be very similar to the resolutions that have been done in the past, including for this particular site.
Okay, with that, does anyone have any objection?
I'll make a motion for that.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, it'll have the two conditions, obviously, addressing outstanding engineering items, as pointed out by Quinn, and that the color should be light gray.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
And we have Cromwell Manor.
The Cromwell Manor Inn is seeking your approval to use our kitchen and dining facilities for a public restaurant. Currently, we are allowed to use that, or those facilities for our on-site guests only. As was said, this is currently limited by the health department to 21, and we're seeking your approval to open that up to the public. That is the request.
Thank you. Full name and address
My full name and address?
for the record.
Sure. Ethan Bloom. I live at 17 Park Road in Irvington, New York, 10533.
You happy, Frank?
I'm happy.
What we have to do for, very demanding. Okay, thank you. Kristen, your comments?
This project site is in the SLR zone. Bed and breakfast inns permitted by special permit, subject to the additional requirements of the code. But there are no changes proposed to the building itself, no internal changes, no exterior modifications, expansions, or any of those things. So this is simply just to modify a plan note that was put on by this board when this project was approved in 1993, I believe this plan is from.
And if I may just jump in, on that point, this board imposed that restriction because I believe that was associated with the zoning board of appeals.
Didn't the zoning board oppose that?
Well, that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. So the planning board required that as a note on the plan because it was a requirement from the zoning board of appeals. I mean, this board approved site plans, the ZBA did not.
And what was that year, Dominic? 1992 was it?
That was 93?
I think the site plan is 93. A second approval was issued by the zoning board in April 1995, which allowed for separate food service to be constructed. So there's been there's been a whole process here. I think 93 was the site plan, which there would have been a use variance before that, and then there's been some changes over the years. So anyway, so that's why, and the zoning board, the applicant has gone back to the zoning board a few times. We have minutes, you have minutes in your package from 2023, where the zoning board determined that the restaurant use was within the scope of the use variance that was originally issued. So I don't think that there's any issue with the actual use of the site based on the zoning board's decision, actual use of the site as a public restaurant. So it's really just the request just to remove that note from the site plan is the last thing that this applicant needs before they're able to have a public restaurant. I will mention that This is a type 2 action under seeker. The applicant provided a short EAF, but no seeker action necessary there. And we'll speak a little bit about parking. I guess there is existing parking at the site. Approximately 18 spaces from what's between the site plan and what I can get from Google Earth.
I can clarify a little bit if you'd like. I
Sure.
believe the official number is 22
Okay,
paved spaces that are currently there.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
use that number.
Okay.
I basically just counted off of satellite.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
22 is fine, and that is based on, at the time of the site plan, it was based on number of rooms because it was not a public restaurant, but there were only 14 rooms, sir?
13.
13
Total.
rooms, so as you can see, that obviously exceeds the number that would be required for the number of rooms. So I don't have any issue there.
Okay, very good. Is that? Good, Quinn?
Yeah, so I had a comment on the parking, but another thing is because you guys are a bed and breakfast, it operates under a temporary resident permit, so that's through Orange County Department of Health. A separate permit will have to be issued for a public restaurant, so should just reach out to Orange County Department of Health to get that situated, and then just confirm that there's adequate ADA access to the restaurant, which can be worked out with Gary.
Okay, that does not have to be a condition of any approvals that we make, correct?
Well, they would be.
The
Health
condition
Department.
of not the approval from the health department. That would be it, okay. Is that it, Quinn?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Comments, Mary Beth?
Since we were just discussing this, I just want to be clear about when you're open to the public, what the seats would actually be, and I'm sure your guests are going to take precedent, right? They
Yes, so we would never exceed the 21 that we're currently zoned for, we currently have with the health department. Right, so then that's exactly right. We would control that. So there would probably be preferred seating for our guests, and then open to the public through reservation and keeping it limited to the 21. Correct.
To follow on that question, that would mean that you needed 13 spaces for the 13 rooms, and you needed 7 spaces for your 21 seats. And you exceed the 20 spaces that quick calculation, I think you said, I think it's just
At 22, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
That was 20, that's 22 paved, but then there is the additional
There's additional
expansion.
space, but if that's
But
the
it's
minimum.
not striped.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
It's grass, though, it's not even.
Right, it's compacted grass, if that's the.
Okay. Mary Beth, you okay?
Yes.
Okay, Steve?
No,
Amy?
Yeah.
Okay. With that, Dominic,
Yes, so this application, correct me if I'm wrong, did not require referral to the county planning department because it's an amendment to an existing application with a change of use, right? We're going from.
Yes, so this application was referred to the county
Oh.
previously. And, I mean, the application itself, the actual proposal has not changed substantially. So that we do have a GML from the last time this application was before the planning board, which was the end of 2023.
And since that time, we have the new MOU with the county, which exempts actually this app. So the current version of it would not need to go back.
Right, the use is
Right.
substantially the same.
Yeah. And so this is a site plan amendment. It's also a type 2 action under seeker. And as a site plan amendment, the board has the discretion whether or not to hold a public hearing.
so I can ask for a request to waive the public hearing. Does anyone have any issues with that?
You
Want to make a
know,
motion to waive?
I'm always for a public hearing, love to hear from the public.
Okay. Okay, what do I have, okay, do I have a majority,
I would see this as a significant change of use, so I would be comfortable with waiving the public hearing.
second? Okay, all in favor?
Fine.
All right?
Okay, there we go. With that, Dominic, can we, are there any restrictions, like as for a resolution?
Yeah, the only restrictions would be payment of fees. I believe there's no outstanding conditions apart from Health Department and dealing with ADA compliance, which we mentioned earlier, and as I said, payment of fees.
Okay, with those conditions, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And to be clear, is it all right if I prepare that resolution and provide it to the chairman for signature, or do you want to review it at next month's meeting?
I can ask for a motion to allow me to sign it if it's okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Motion,
So moved.
second? In favor?
Aye.
Oh, we don't get over yet, that authority. Thank you. Okay, with that, all set.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we go to Star Warehouse.
Good evening, everyone. Nick Rognetta from Peter Zeck and Fowle Engineering. This is the Star Warehouse project. We recently made a submission, a lot of plan cleanup, addressed most of the entirety of the comments that were received from MHE's office. We also made an application to the DOT for the highway work permit, because that is something that's going to have to be addressed. That's currently under review. We met with the town consultants at the May 15th workshop meeting, and that was to discuss the potential use of a data storage center on the property. At that meeting, it was discussed that this isn't part of the code, but it would fall under warehouse use. So we'd like to incorporate that into, the plans and have that solidified here as a potential use that the applicant could do on the property. So that's the majority of the revisions that were made.
And where's that in the notes, or?
Yes. Yeah, it's on the bulk table on page 1.
This calls out data storage center sort of as a separate use here.
Well, it does on the bulk table, but the point that Nick was making is that as far as the code's concerned, it falls within the broad category of warehousing within the town of Cornwall zoning code.
The only reason I ask about that is, of course, data storage centers are renowned for using large amounts of power, electrical power, and I don't remember us addressing that during secret.
Fair comment.
So, when we talked about the warehouse on 9W, the treetop, I believe that we asked for an evaluation of power availability and, whether they would be limiting the opportunities of adjacent landowners to take advantage of existing power infrastructure. Certainly, this is the first data center that I've seen come in front of this board. It might not be the last, but I think it would be proper then to amend seeker by asking for an evaluation of power availability. And if it's not available, how would that be accomplished? Right, and what would the impact be on adjacent property owners? Because we currently face this issue on West Point. So,
It's a very good point.
but this is new territory for me.
Kristen or Quinn, do you have a recommendation on how that might be addressed?
Yes, control Hudson.
We can amend the seeker findings, if that's the direction that this board wants to go, and we certainly can amend the seeker findings. There would have to be some kind of analysis, whether you reach out to Central Hudson or whether you have some way of providing that analysis based on what's there and what you may or may not need. I think some type of narrative on that would be helpful, again, you might either reach out to the power company or you can maybe find a similar use and figure out what their demands are.
Some of the requirements per square foot for power consumption have been startling to me. But I've seen a little bit of this data punching around, and you can have a fairly large amount of power requirements in a fairly small footprint for some of these facilities.
I know the county's been looking into that also. so.
That's correct, and so I'm uncertain what standard to ask you to look into. I mean, if it was a traffic study, we'd look at the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We would know right where to look for, this is how many square feet, this is how many trips I'm generating. For this particular question, it's a little more complex, and technically, I guess Quinn, I'd ask the engineer to look into what would be the right number to apply here, in terms of like kilowatts per square foot or something like that.
You can look into that. You see something?
Okay. I don't mean to open a can of worms here, but,
That's
you know,
not a can, that-
if
that's
this
very
were turned into, for instance, a Bitcoin mining site, the power consumption could be significant.
Right.
The county's
On
doing this
that
too.
point, I may.
They've had different projects, I know,
That's a worthwhile
Looking at.
inquiry.
Yeah, on that point, I mean, ultimately, like, this will fall under the jurisdiction of Central Hudson. And so if the applicant contacts Central Hudson and says, this is our potential project for data storage consisting of so many servers or like however it
I
is.
think on a square footage basis is how I'd
Yeah.
like to see it done.
Yeah, and if Central Hudson responds with a will serve letter that says that they have enough power to service that project, that probably would be dispositive of the issue, would it not?
I would be interested in how Central Hudson arrived at that conclusion. I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up is because municipalities have been surprised by this nationwide over the last 10 years. And I would just be interested in how Central Hudson came to the conclusion, especially because it could limit further economic activity in our community if there were insufficient power available, or it could mandate the pulling of new lines in. And pulling new lines in is a 5 to 10 year outlook.
Understood, and I think it's worthwhile to understand these things as well. It's just, when it comes to environmental review and reopening seeker, there's two different categories within seeker. Like, you have categories of things that can be evaluated and then potentially mitigated. And then you have other things that are basically informational only and not necessarily an applicant could be required to mitigate one of them. And I think this, as far as utility work is concerned, like, falls between the applicant and Central Hudson, rather than this board saying that.
Well, is there a per square foot formula that would be applied to?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, and if that were the case, and if they were to present that to Central Hudson, and Central Hudson says, we have the capacity to meet that in future demand, would that satisfy?
Well, it would depend on whether that consumes 100% of the remaining capacity in that vicinity, right? So we're now saying to the adjacent property owners, if they install a new stove, that we're over. Like, that's the question.
In a way, like, this is very similar to like school children generation, right? Because like this board has the ability to understand and require an applicant to identify like what the potential school children impacts would be from a particular residential project on the school. But you also don't have the ability to say yes or no to a project just because like it might generate more students that may go to a school. So I think understanding the impact is one thing, but requiring mitigation, which is I think where you're potentially heading, is an area that's probably beyond the board's authority, because it relates solely to what Central Hudson is responsible for doing. In the same way that the school district is responsible for making sure that they've planned ahead and have sufficient capacity and deal with fluctuations in school children either up or down, and that becomes their responsibility.
I guess I see it more like water and wastewater, right? Like, to me, it's like water supply, right? If the applicant is pushing the water treatment plant to 100%, we as a board would need to know that, because there's adjacent applicants, there's the comprehensive plan to consider. The comprehensive plan may consider that water as being an essential utility for expansion plans within the region or the neighborhood, rather than with a single property. So I'm thinking through it, Dominic. I'm not trying to contradict. I'm simply thinking through. I'd like an opportunity to think about that in a little more depth, and take a look at the town code and how it applies in this way, and maybe have a further discussion about it.
Of course, I think in any event, it's incumbent upon the applicant provide that analysis so the board can understand exactly what the impacts are. And I think you have probably an idea on your path forward.
Yeah.
It looks like you need two things, correct? And correct me if I'm wrong, I think we wanted, what we don't want to do is prolong the discussion related to something that is outside the purview of the planning board, correct? So we want to know what the maximum usage per square foot would be for this type of center. And we want to know, B, whether or not Central Hudson will attest to being able to meet that demand. That's your charge. Is there something more than that that we're asking of them?
And I'm asking how much capacity would then remain for adjacent landowners who may have.
But what Dominic is saying is that may be outside the purview of the planning board, is it not?
Well, I mean, I think we'll have to see what the analysis is and what Central Hudson says, because, Central Hudson, certainly they're in the business of supplying power to as many people as they can supply power to, and they also have an obligation to supply power to various different projects. And so, it's a little bit different than like a public utility in the sense of like for water or wastewater, where there is, a municipal obligation to make sure that the people, like for instance, within a water or sewer district, that everybody who wants to tap in within that water or sewer district has capacity. This is a little bit, it's more of a quasi-governmental process, and they're a little bit outside the seeker process, in the sense that they're not in, an agency that typically requires mitigation for projects. It's their obligation to supply power as power is being demanded. So
I just want to make sure that you're not walking out of here with marching orders and then come back in and then not have, and have to go back out with I want to make sure what we're looking for here.
The last piece that I'm looking for that I think is where perhaps we're meeting a small disagreement is whether or not Central Hudson owes us a number like, hey, look, you have 20 megawatts running down that road. This project puts you at, 19.999, and now somebody comes to draw a building permit for an adjacent site and they can't because there's no power available. That's the scenario that I'm concerned about. And I'm not sure exactly how best to apply the code there.
But my interest down that line is whether or not that's within the purview of the
I think
planning
it
board.
is.
That's
I think it
Would
is.
Central Hudson be required to meet the demand? I mean, so,
But if let's say the comprehensive plan calls for general business development along that section of 32, right? Or the zoning does, and now that's not possible because of this
but I
project.
guess, I'm not sure that, who would say it's not possible? Central Hudson would come back and say that?
That's why I would
Because I
look,
feel like Central Hudson would say, okay, well, now we need to add capacity and
right,
to meet
and I'm
the
saying that the
new
lead time on
demand.
that, the lead time on that is 5 to 10 years.
I was gonna say, that's.
Which they do at their own.
So once Central Hudson
Their
determined to
business
add
Right.
capacity,
That's
exactly,
it could be very
that's
challenging.
That's my argument. And what I don't want is you guys walking out of here with one idea and then coming back, answering those questions, and then having us pile on you again. And I just want to make sure that we have a rough idea of what exactly it is, unless being very clear about it.
Yeah,
I think
I
that you're,
just wanna know
but
how
that
much
question might
capacity
be
remains
better
after
asked
this
of
thing
Central
turns on.
Hudson, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, then of, and I'm not defending you by any stretch, but I don't know whether that's within your purview to determine future needs of the area surrounding.
Wouldn't the applicant be just providing the information based on their project?
Right.
That's right. And then what I would ask for from Central Hudson is to know what remains after this project turns on.
And
You're
that,
not gonna get that answer.
right.
You're asking for something they're not gonna provide you. If you go to the village for water, they're gonna give you a letter that says, we can provide water. They don't tell you where it's coming from, the well field, the aqueduct, the reservoir. You don't get into that. The village says, we can provide water. Case closed, that's what you do. Central Hudson, I think it's reasonable you ask, do they have the capacity? But you're not looking at anything else. What if they want to do solar? What if they want to do other options? Really what you want to know is, you realize there's a lot of electrical capacity that's required. It's probably reasonable to say, Central Hudson, can you provide it?
Right.
And I think that's where it ends. You ask them for a letter to say,
that's
can
where I
we
need to-
provide the service? But to find out what's remaining, or what they ought to go through, or what upgrade Central Hudson has to do, I don't think is a reasonable question. In your mind, I get it that it is, but I think you're putting an undue burden on the applicant.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's, I think, where Dominic's going, undue burden.
so Central Hudson could
That sounds like
say
a legal
that,
here.
Central Hudson could say, for instance, that they could serve this project, but only if a substation was built, you know, on this site. And so that would be something that the applicant would have to evaluate, you know, as part of whether or not they want to include that as part of their site plan set. And, you know, and you would evaluate that as part of a site plan amendment.
So the last one in is the loser. in that- in that.
Well, that falls, well, all socials is the same principle, right? With the water and sewer capacity.
Yeah,
They're
sure.
exceeding it, can't get any more. So we're back to where we were.
Yeah, I think what we could do is we could, you know, do an analysis and look into the kilowatt per square foot. You know, I don't know as far as technical standards on that, so we would have to do a little research. But we could reach out to Central Hudson, we could be on a workshop agenda just for discussion. And if we did provide everything, then come back to the planning board. If you feel that we didn't, we can do a little more research and, you know, give you what.
But I would be interested in knowing what standards apply.
Of course.
Yeah.
We always.
Oh, good.
I mean, they have to be able to ask Central Hudson, can you supply us with this much power? And I think what you're asking is, how do you get to this much power? You know?
Correct.
Right. At least part of what you're asking.
Yeah, and that's what coming back to the transportation engineers standards. I mean, it's well known for trip generation and all these other things that we use, water, et cetera, parking spaces. But data centers there's not, to my knowledge, a well-established standard out there.
It's a very good question to raise.
Yeah, and I think it varies, you know, depending on what you're doing in the data center.
Exactly right, but you're not nailed down in terms of what type of data center here.
And the
Right,
applicant
so if you
might
want
decide to
further-
put solar on the roof. for
Yeah,
instance.
or to restrict what types of data centers would go in the text below.
Right.
So you might say, hey, my note is, yeah, I could do a data center, but I'm gonna limit it to 50,000 out of the total square footage, or something like that. So I think there are routes forward if that power density ends up being too high. But I do think that needs to be captured.
So what we're looking for is you're going to research and find out what the maximum use per square foot that would be if it was a data center. And we're gonna ask for something from Central Hudson which says basically that they can meet that demand, period. And from there, we'll have possibly other conversations, but that's all conversation that you should be involved with. The rest of it has to do with the planning board and what the scope of our capabilities are, so maybe we can mash that out. But in the meantime, I don't want you going away thinking that you're gonna be coming back till, 2027, trying to figure out, whether you can do this or not. So let's just get those questions answered, and then we can move forward from there. Is that acceptable? Yeah.
Understood, and just to clarify, I just wanted to confirm that we're not reopening seeker at the moment, and that we're just pretty much providing with the
Our purpose is
documentation.
not to open seeker, or to reopen seeker, I should say.
This was presented on a concept-only basis, right?
Correct.
So like you're
Yeah.
not asking for approval at this time, and nor,
that's fair.
So there's nothing to.
It's fair, it's a good question.
So it would be or wouldn't be a change of use if this was to become a data center?
It wouldn't be a change of use as far as the zoning is concerned. Your question regarding seeker is relevant, however, as to whether or not there is significant, change from what was previously evaluated and summarized in the finding statement.
Good, okay. Yeah,
Yep, thank you everyone, have a nice night.
thank you.
Thank you.
So I have, if I may, have some advice
Yes,
that I would like to provide to the board on general matters. It's not on any particular application.
This is a legal matter requiring executive or legal advice.
It would be an attorney-client session just
Okay.
for consultation with counsel. I have some updates for you
Okay, fine.
as far as it relates to general town business. And if it's all right with the board, if you could have a motion and a second and a vote to go into an attorney-client session, that would be great. It would just be me, and I think we're still on camera. But the rest of the board's consultants and the stenographer could go. I'll let you know what time we come out. And there would be
Lose
no,
our identity also.
and there would be no need for any votes or anything after
Okay.
the
Not
session.
taking any action.
Not taking any action.
Thank you. So we'll end the public session and go into a private session with our attorney and the consultants, other than Dominic.
Yes, and you would just need a motion and a vote.
So I need favor?
Aye.